All right, we're on the air, and I'm here with Hagbard Celine. How you doing?
I'm pretty well this evening. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon down here, and
Yeah,
it's a
it's rounding on
day.
9 here.
So the reason I reached out to Hagbard is because he's a man who lives, roughly in that area of the country where Evergreen State Looney Bin is located, and I thought he would be a good man to talk about these kind of issues because he's pretty smart and he talks about this kind of stuff now and then.
And while to clarify, I don't live near to
So,
this college in particular, I have to admit that it's the same roaming band of lunatics that you see at all these events along the West Coast. It's not even necessarily just these students. There's a roaming band of lunatics causing this.
I understand that the person that was running the Facebook group 2020 Evergreen State College was actually the um, Washington State organizer for the Bernie Sanders campaign.
So clearly a right-wing nut job.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so just to get people up to date, I mean, I think this is getting an enormous amount of press, and I was drawn to this like a moth to a flame because it seemed to me, of all the lunacy we see, and I cover quite a bit of this on my channel, and most of it is in the United States because if it happened in Australia, I would cover it, but there's just less of it. And as Australia is, I think Australia is just a couple of years behind. It is coming. We see the signs of it, but we're generally always like a year or two behind. But most of it coming out of the United States, you go, oh yeah, there's another bunch of idiots. This seems to me to be an escalation, that this is a little different, that this is closer to erupting into violence. And I know people will say, oh, we've seen violence at Berkeley, we've seen, which, but by the way, was mainly Antifa. It wasn't the actual students. The students were egging them on. But then you have, of course, you had the incident at Middlebury where Charles Murray wasn't attacked, but his offsider was, and she ended up in a hospital with, some sort of neck injury. But I feel like watching these students that they are one step from taking a chair like the Chinese Red Guard and smashing it over a teacher's head.
Yeah,
And
I fear you're not wrong.
yeah, so and that's why I spent quite a bit of time making a video on this because I thought this is an important one, this one, and it's important for a couple of reasons. And one is that it's so close to that sort of breaking point, and two is the utter capitulation of the university administration. And this has been a running theme, but they are almost, with the exception of firing the professor, who, as you've seen the Rubin report, he thinks that they would love to do that because it would make the problem go away. But it's really difficult for them because they don't really have any basis for doing it.
Yeah, it's not even like they agree politically, just for the sake of ease. They would like him gone. Done.
Yeah. But the problem is that these lunatics will not stop. It's not like if you throw them, something that they'll go, oh, okay, we're done now. We'll be fine. No, they're just going to keep coming like the Terminator.
Yeah, the question is why would they? I was raised by a behaviorist, and one of the most important things to understand is someone won't change their behavior, and the main reason any behavior forms is because it works. That's it. That's the only reason the behavior continues. So as long as this behavior works, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it's working. And it's not even like it's working for a price, which eventually through attrition, you'd see some change. People don't want to do this if it's costly to them. But it's not costly socially. It makes no difference to them. As a matter of fact, they're getting socially rewarded for it. Mm-hmm. It's not costly to them. They don't lose their jobs if they ever had them. Who knows? But they're not losing their positions of power. They're getting what they want. And it's not like in the 1960s and 1970s when cops were hitting them with, water hoses and dogs.
Yeah.
They're not even suffering physically for this.
No.
They're just standing around, having a cookout, punching random people when they don't like them, who are largely not fighting back. and then getting capitulated to by every person in a position of power. So why would they change anything? That would be foolish. They're winning. What's the point of not continuing?
Yeah. I mean, why? I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not going to get, what was it, Reagan in '69 in California, and someone ended up getting shot?
Yeah.
I mean,
that wouldn't shock me.
I mean, we're not at that point, and I just don't see that anyone would have the balls to pull something like that off. But as you say, they're just being emboldened. I think actually in the Middlebury case, one of the students or faculty just got awarded a bravery award or something, or some kind of award for standing up and essentially just shouting down Charles Murray for a book that he wrote 25 years ago, and which is only, by the way, more prescient today in what he said in that book.
Yeah, well, that's something I've largely noticed too, that faculty is more engaged in this than I think I've seen in the past. I actually am still in contact with one of my old philosophy professors, and he's an old Vietnam vet who picked up philosophy because he read the U.S. Army manual and recognized that, okay, you're reading the instructions and it's telling you how to silently kill a sentry, right? That's one thing, but the other layer to that he finally realized was that it was someone's job to write that.
Yeah.
And that really broke him. He actually just lost the ability to function as a soldier after realizing it's some like schmo's job to figure out the best way to kill someone. It has to be. Empirically, it must be their job to figure out how to do this right. That's kind of sick. So, and he's shocked at this. He's like, these kids don't understand. Like in the 60s and 70s, things got ugly. And I mean, we're talking things like the integration of the southeastern portion of the country when it comes to schools.
Yeah.
That was not a pleasant process. People like to idealize it, but that was not a pleasant process for anybody. There were a lot of people that were hurt and a lot of lives changed in that process. And these kids are now getting that kind of capitulation without any of the sacrifice.
Yeah. And the thing is that the thing that they're standing up for, it's not like they're standing up for civil rights. It's not like they're standing up for equality in any terms of equality of opportunity, and they're not interested in dialogue. I mean, this is the closest analogy. I said Stalinist show trial in one of my videos, but it's more like the Maoist Red Guard. I mean, that's what it really is, because that was a student-led sort of uprising in '60.
Which Orwell book was it where they had the 1 minute of shame or whatever, or 1 minute of hate, where you all just stand around and shoot at someone?
Yeah, that's 1984.
That's what we're looking at. How is this not what we're looking at?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because there's no, I mean, you see Brett Weinstein, very careful in the way he speaks. He's very careful to say, hey, look, this is dialectic. Let's, I listen to you, you listen to me. They have absolutely no intention of entering into a dialogue. It is our way or nothing else. And, it's our way or shut up. But now it's our way or we'll beat the shit out of you. Because what he said on that Rubin Report interview was not in any of the videos that I could pick up, was that they had been threatened. The demands that were put to the cuck in chief over there, the president, were accompanied by messages of, if you don't do these things, there will be violence.
Yeah, we will escalate.
Yeah. And how and I mean, at some level, at what point does the law step in here? Because the president has made the police step down. And one of the interesting things was that the head of the police on campus was made to come to that show trial unarmed. And she did. And that's, I mean, because you could feel, I don't know, I watched that, you could feel the tension in that room. You thought, these people are fucking dead. I mean, there's a mob here that if it just tips over, this could end really badly.
These people want violence. That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand when they have this discussion. This is cathartic to them. They want this. This is what they desire. I sit in bars, and then I live in a campus town. I sit in bars and I listen to the students, and they're not talking about football or anything. They're talking politics, but they're talking it, and they're speaking about it in a manner that's like, well, what is the next movement? Like, where do we go next? Who is the enemy? We need to define who that is. That's very important in their talking circles.
Yeah.
Defining who the enemy is, and the irony is it's almost always middle class, essentially quote unquote allies or liberals that are not willing to play ball with us.
Yeah.
That tends to be who everyone knows the conservatives are evil. We don't even need to have that conversation. They're Nazis. What are we even doing? That's a waste of our energies. What we're doing is figuring out who else falls into that category. And it's an ever broadening game because they're basically just sitting around discussing their D&D campaign. I've seen people do it I used to do it. And you get way over elaborate and involved and you have all these plans. That's what they're doing. The difference is they're actually stepping out of houses and doing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you forget what it's like. Maybe you're closer to that university experience, but when you're that age, everything is so immediate.
Yes.
Like everything is so vitally important. And you look back in years and go, oh God, we were just totally overreacting. But these people really believe the immediacy of their cause, even though it's complete lunacy.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be approached by the U.S. legal system and made it clear what adulthood and consequences and things like that were. That wasn't allowed for me, but it doesn't appear as though that's going to happen in the case of these kids. I don't see a lot of them doing time. Like, I'm named after on this channel a character that is essentially an anarcho-capitalist.
Right.
All the governments hate him. He sells heroin. He's not a good guy. Neither am I. I'm not a good guy either. But I know that. That's the thing that I think is most vital to being human, is knowing you're not perfect. You're not the good guy. There's no hero. These kids think they're heroes. And that allows them a certain freedom that normal people don't experience.
And there's a sense that there's always this sense when it's that they're fighting for a utopia that does not exist. And
of course they are. Weren't you in your youth? Didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look at our flawed world, man. Don't you want to make everything better?
I went down that path at some point in my 20s where I read a book called In the Absence of the Sacred, which was, do you know that one?
Yes. Excellent read.
Yeah. And just went down that path, and Derek Jensen books and all this kind of stuff. And I got, embroiled. Oh, the world is just a horrible place. And, but I came out the other side quite thankfully,
Yeah.
But
how many people in your life just on a random occasion when you approached them with this shit looked at you and said, you're being an idiot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, kids aren't getting
and that mentality, I remember having this mentality where no one gets it except me.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And there's only like 3 people in the world that get it. The guy who wrote the book that I'm reading, he gets it. I get it. And everyone else is an idiot. And I'm right. And then when you meet a few people like that, all of a sudden you've got a fucking cult.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's kind of like I always compare even like this kind of mentality being reinforced or allowed is the same as like the whole non-binary gender people that just randomly at 15 decide for attention they want to play this game. It all comes down to them simply never being told no.
Yeah.
And even I'm actually all for exploration. I'm an old acid head. I'm all for it. The difference is we knew what we were doing was somewhat wrong. We all acknowledged that. No one who was involved in that scene, aside from the people who'd actually lost their goddamn minds, thought that they weren't doing wrong. But these kids really think that, like I said, they're the central character. They know right, like you said, and they're going to change the world, and they're going to remake the world in their image. When that sentence ever ended well?
No, I know. It's frightening to me, and I think, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this about public education in the United States, the lack of things like civics being taught, that the historical knowledge of students seems to be just about zero. Like, I'm old enough, and I'm in my early 40s. I remember when the Berlin Wall came down. I remember when there was a real sense of who was good and who was evil. Now, that's a simplistic dichotomy view of the world back then, but there was a sense back then that we won, the capitalistic, social democratic world had won over the communist system. Our system was better. Just look at the prosperity it's created. Their system was evil. These kids did not live through that. There's a whole generation that haven't. They don't remember it. I was in high school. I remember talking about it in class. And they don't have this sense. And they think they are unable to see what that type of society looks at, even though you've got a modern day example in Venezuela. They don't see it. They're playing the true Scotsman of Marxism.
Yeah, Venezuela failed because of American intervention. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
It's somehow the Americans' fault. It's always the Americans' fault.
It's the Noam Chomsky theory, isn't it? It's like, I think it was Gad Saad who came up with the Noam Chomsky theory, where whatever you throw out, whatever problem you throw out, 3 steps you can get back to military industrial complex at the source.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, when you were speaking to educational things in the United States, I myself witnessed that occur. I might be of just the last age, because we discussed it in my high school. In middle school, back in 9th or 7th and 8th grade, we were given civics courses, and we were given what were called critical thinking courses.
Right.
And literally, our critical thinking teacher just tried to trick you, and to teach you that adults aren't always telling you the truth. Don't always listen to authority. Always try and look deeper and find out what's actually going on. And she would just sit up in front of class and lie and wait for us to call her on it. That was almost our critical thinking course. Students aren't given any of that anymore. They almost don't want you to have those tools. I describe it as them pulling up the drawbridge behind us. We watched that happen. We trampled through the gate, turned around, and they snapped the drawbridge closed. And now I'm looking out over the castle walls going, those guys will never know. They're just out there. They got their basic. I mean, these classes were replaced with physical education when I left. I mean, I'm all for not being a fat society. Get your ass out there and exercise. But A, I'm not certain that should be something required by the schools. And B, it certainly shouldn't replace actual functioning classes like civics, which no one liked. That's the other thing, is it was a popular move. You're not going to get a lot of a pushback when all of a sudden the school says, maybe we don't teach kids civics anymore. Everyone hates it. The grades are low. It kills GPAs of otherwise promising students. Well, there you go.
Yeah, well, let's just fill them full of other bullshit instead, like, power plus privilege and Black History Month and all the rest of it.
Behind me, they closed the gifted programs. They closed the accelerated education programs. They closed everything. I got all those. I got access to all that.
Is that part of every child, No Child Left Behind? Is that where it started?
I was so young, I only remember it happening. I have no idea the politisphere that was occurring around it. I'm only 29. So I honestly don't recall what occurred, if it was budget cuts or if it was a political move or if it was to keep the GPA up. Like I said, that usually is the motivator. They want to change that GPA any way they can in a positive. But they just did all these programs that were sending kids into colleges. I mean, my school had, of the state that I think was like 15 or 20, my school sent 5 of the National Merit Scholars. And then they shut all these programs down, and the next year we sent 2. Watching the death of a whole type of learning, and now we're all teaching to the test, as they say. We're not really interested in. That's the other problem with college. We've promoted the idea that everyone needs to go to college.
Yeah, this is one of my bugbears. I got actually an interesting email from someone, from a subscriber who I've had on as a live stream guest before, and he, I guess he's probably in his 50s now, or even 60, but he's been a consultant to government and large business for a long time, and he was talking to a bank executive in charge of graduate recruitment here in Australia, and they are looking at changing the way they recruit graduates and looking outside of people with university qualifications. And I think this speaks to the idea that a university qualification is not what it used to be. It's been so devalued.
Yeah, it really has. It's sad to watch happen. It's sad to watch a bachelor's degree open the same doors that a high school diploma did, and now a master's degree opens the doors a bachelor's did. And even then, people who go into these things don't realize. I've watched kids and this is from my own experience and then from my experience working somewhat close to the college here, I've seen kids go in thinking that they're going to get, engineering degrees and it just turns out they're not. They're just not ever going to do that. So, but now they're invested. They're pot committed, and they have to continue. So they end up getting something like an English degree, or something like that, and then all you are is in the hole. And that's where you have all this. The running joke in America is English majors work as baristas.
Yeah,
that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think that people talk about a crisis that young men are rapidly approaching, that they will be 40% and then eventually just 1/3 of university undergraduates. And I actually don't think that's a bad thing, as long as they get pushed in a different direction, which my idea would be innovation, startups, entrepreneurship.
Or trade schools.
Or trade schools, yeah.
I've always argued for that. Like one of the strange, just a random little problem that's happening in many counties here. Wastewater, the process of removing sewage, removing the bad bits from that sewage, and then returning semi or clean water back to the environment. It's a very important job. It keeps
gray water systems, I think they're called here.
Yeah, that keeps societies going, civilizations moving. They're dying of attrition all across the United States of America. Just dying of attrition. Just the guys who have been working the job for 30 years, they're retiring. They're done. 70 years old, I'm quitting. I am done. And there's nobody under them. There's nobody there to take over, because nobody even knows these kind of jobs exist. How many people know that that's an option, or that job gives you an early retirement, a solid income, all the health insurance you could ever need, all the things people cry about, and they require no education. You can walk in with a high school diploma. Nobody knows that. Absolutely nobody knows that, but they're crying because they're working as baristas, or they'd show up and go, this job isn't exactly air conditioned and pleasant, so I don't want to do it.
Yeah. I just want to switch back to
we got off on a tangent.
That's all right. I like tangents. But I want to go back to Evergreen, because I want to talk about the university, because it's something that I'm not, the makeup of the university is I'm not particularly familiar with. So I'm looking at the page here. So it's a public liberal arts college, which is kind of strange in and of itself, because liberal arts colleges are usually these sort of private, highly expensive things. Isn't that right? Usually. So this is but more than one person has now commented that they have a open enrollment and that they take 98.9% of applicants. And on top of that, the tuition for a year, if you live in Washington State, is $6,500 a year. And if you don't come from Washington State, it's $24,000 a year. So isn't this just an invitation to drag in all the dregs in Washington State?
Not just in Washington State. That actually would prioritize them accepting out-of-state applicants that could pay. Because then they can fill the college with people spending $12,000 per semester.
Right. And
so anybody in who's looking to get it, essentially people are going to see that and think it's a nice college and it's going to look good on some application somewhere. Yeah.
But I'm guessing that a degree from Evergreen State University is probably dropping as we speak in value.
Okay, it was mentioned in the email that was sent you, and I did my own independent looky-loo into this. Evergreen's not a respected college. It hasn't been a respected college in a long time, possibly since its founding. It's always been an ideal where they were like, we are a nice and liberal area, so we're going to open this cool college for all the kids around here. It was a liberal community college kind of setting, was almost what it was intended to be.
Yeah.
And then it obviously got a lot of the, like you said, dregs.
Yeah.
Who ended up there.
Yeah. And you heard Weinstein talk about the kind of programs they offer. Now, I went through. They offer, there's maths, there's physics, but they seem to be almost tiny, like adjunct faculties. But a lot of it's arts and African studies and all that kind of touchy-feely bullshit, which is always a red flag in my estimation. It's setting people up for non-careers or being diversity officers at university.
Yeah, it's activist degrees, then they're very, very popular. And even most of the guys I know from like the 70s and 60s think it's a disgusting path to take.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the thing with this is, though, that if I get back to Brett Weinstein, is that so was understandably shocked by the reaction, because he felt, and has been told by the police, he has to stay off campus because they cannot guarantee his safety, which is pretty shocking. But I have to express some feeling that he's kind of naive. That how could he not see? I mean, he obviously gets the news and pays attention to what goes on around the country. How could he not see some of this fermenting? I mean, he strikes me as somewhat naive. He strikes me as an idealist that is slowly coming to the realization that his world view is collapsing.
Yeah, well, like I said, most of these places are pretty insular. And I know people have used this metaphor derisively before, but they're kind of like monasteries at this point. These people don't have contact with the real world. Most of what they do have contact with the real world is through the loudest students. And that's how they've coped with reality. That's how they get their information about what's going on. So it's not surprising to me that he would be shocked in that particular environment, because he would have up to this point been avoiding all the stuff that we have been seeing. It wouldn't be on his newsfeed. You know what I mean? He's been reading, HuffPo.
Right.
This coming up on his newsfeed, he has no idea. So then all of a sudden he says one thing that seems, fairly benign to him, but it's being seen as being a racist move, a move that is an act of white supremacy. I could unpack it for him better. He can't seem to even understand what's happening. Yeah. But I could even unpack it for him better. Like, sir, what's occurring is by simply imposing your whiteness onto a space where you've been asked to leave, you're asserting your dominance as a white person and saying you can't be asked to leave because you're white. But he can't even process that because he's so far distant from that.
Yeah.
He hasn't heard the rhetoric 10,000 times like we both have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's stunning. I mean, he's an old-fashioned, I mean, he says he's very progressive, but he's got old-fashioned liberal ideas, which is, hey, no one gets priority or can be stopped from speaking because of the color of their skin. That's just a basic right of equality. And he can't actually process that this is not the way that kids think. He can't even process the idea that, how can you call me racist for saying that I can't? He doesn't even. But see, this is the thing. I mean, how could he have avoided knowing that this existed, that this type of culture?
I can't imagine he interacts outside of the classroom with his students very often. I don't think he teaches a subject where this kind of stuff would come up a lot.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
I think mostly that's it. I think mostly he just simply doesn't engage with the student body, or maybe he doesn't engage with the Afro Studies department. He has absolutely no relation to any of those people and hasn't. I mean, and like I was trying to say a moment ago, the reason he says he's progressive and he's a Bernie supporter, he votes socialist. That's all it is. That's really all it means. In his mind, that is the left. That is as left as it gets. He's still operating on that old system.
Yeah, he's not operating on the jackboots system that these kids are operating on.
Yeah, no, he hasn't gone full tanky. He's still operating on democratic socialism. He's not to the Stalinist yet.
You know what? The other aspect to Weinstein that I find interesting, and I find this a lot in people that they have an experience when they're young that defines their politics, and it's always dangerous when you do this, because you're literally defining your politics and your worldview based on an anecdote that happened to you. So you heard him because you heard the Rubin Report, him describe that incident when he was at, was it Prince? No, what was it was a fairly good school. Do you remember from that interview?
I don't remember off the top. I think it was Princeton.
Even if it wasn't. So he attended, I think he was an undergraduate in 1987, and he was asked to go to what do you call them? What's the opposite of a sorority?
Yeah, it was like a fraternity.
Fraternity party. So basically, go ahead.
They called it like a surprise party or a mystery party or something. They had it like real intriguing.
Right. And so basically they got there and he said it was pretty boring. There's guys in the corner watching porn and other people just, having a drink or smoking a bong or whatever. And then at some point during the night, some guy comes along with some black hookers. And this is sort of there's some kind of initiation rite with a cucumber and, whatever. So he finds this horribly offensive. He wasn't there for that. He actually went home before that started. But he finds this horribly offensive and he speaks out about it on campus. He gets maligned because of the culture there is still very much pro, these sort of fraternities doing whatever they like. Yeah, it's frat boy season. But this seems to define as politics. And I think this is such a big lesson in life because, he's basically he's forgot the not all is what he's done. When sometimes not all is a useless thing to say, but he's neglected the other side, which is that, well, most people don't carry on like this.
Wait. So it would be wrong for someone to form their political opinions from getting jumped by a group of black guys? That would be wrong? Oh, man. Think some stuff. Shit. No.
Yeah.
I'm just saying making political decisions from an anecdote is perhaps an error in judgment and can lead to some bad things.
Yeah, and I see this time and time again. Here in Australia, we have this guy who was the head of the armed services in Australia. So that's not a small position to occupy. By the way, he spent a lifetime in the armed services and never had a medal, never had any kind of commendation for being in the field. This guy's an administrator. And essentially, he had an experience where a female officer or, infantry person came to him and broke down in tears, and I think her parents were there about all the discrimination, all the sexism that she'd faced. And so what does he do? So now he's out there. He was Australian of the Year a couple of years ago because he came out and said he's for diversity and changing the face of the armed services, and he walks around in high heels and demonstrations, to prove his virtue. Yeah, seriously. If you I might even do it now. David.
That's
David
a real.
Morris.
We can all hope to be so strong and brave one day. Okay, we can laugh what we want now, but I'm for sure never putting on high heels and going on a march. It's not even the look, man. High heels are killer. I'll have blisters you wouldn't believe.
So let me fucking. I might share the screen here if I can, because this is a beautiful one. But this is just the folly of thinking that your personal, or making a personal anecdote of yours, then a public crusade.
Yeah, there are many examples of this. There's a woman named Jane something. She was known as one of the early anti-racist activists in America. Her entire policy is based on the fact that her dad was racist. Her entire existence is arguing with her dead father for all intents and purposes. When she's yelling at these students and explaining what all these things are, she's yelling at her dad. She's exercising her personal demons, and that's regularly the case, I've noticed.
Right. Can you see that on the screen? Can you see that?
Yeah, nice kicks, dude. Violence is not okay. Thank you.
Well, this is what I love about, I think in the United States you have the same stop violence against women, which is like, isn't that, what a noble cause, what a brave soul to come out. Oh, you're against violence? Wow. That really puts you in an elite class. I mean, it's such pathetic virtue signaling to the extreme. It's so like, oh, let me get this straight. You're against people committing violence. That's your big stance. That's the fucking line that you've drawn in the sand. This is your big issue? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a little weak. Let's see where you stand on something like, like what was the Holocaust bad? I mean, to go that far down the rabbit hole? Like what's your line here, dude? Like, yeah, obviously. Do we need to even sit down and discuss this every time we have a conversation about the world?
Yeah. And let's leave aside the fact
that genocide's not great. All these things are bad. We get that. We can start there. Really, we can.
Yeah, and let's leave aside the fact that if you're going to concentrate all your energy on stopping violence against women, you're stopping about 1/3 of violence.
Yeah. Well, and
most violence is male on male.
Well, and the other thing about this Evergreen thing in general, I wish more people seem to recognize that it is nothing but power. That's all it is. It's nothing but power play.
Yeah, yeah. You saw did you see the story about the Hawaii mathematics professor?
I missed that one in this.
Okay, that was maybe 2 weeks ago. I think I did it. I do this regular under the radar every Saturday. So I think it was not Saturday just gone, the previous one. So she came out and said this Hawaii, like she just came out and said, if you are white male, you need to resign your position now. And she was talking to people occupying academic positions like professors and deans and administrators at universities.
If you won't step down, at least get off your hiring board and make sure you're replaced with a black transsexual person with a disability.
Yeah.
Like what?
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I saw that. I just remember she was from Hawaii.
Yeah, University of Hawaii. And I mean, that's, we're not even dancing around. So you see how the language has changed? Like 2 years ago, they wouldn't have been that explicit, right? They would have talked about the diversity and we need more people of color. But now you can openly say, and as far as I know, this woman hasn't been censured at all. I mean, you can openly say white people need to get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I would have been shocked at that 2 years ago, but because I've been tracking the escalation for the last 2 years, I'm not. This is where I was telling people it was going to be 2 years ago. This is almost why I started my channel. This is what really started it all off, was going, guys, do we not see that this is kind of starting to shift in the opposite direction? That once upon a time it was all about equality, and now it's being about how to equalize. These aren't the same conversations, guys. I know it sounds like kind of similar, but it's not. We're all seeking equality. We don't want to equalize society.
Isn't this where you're always going to end up with progressivism? Because, okay, so you have the Civil Rights Act, you establish equality under the law, right? We had the same thing here in Australia. I think we were a couple of years after you about Aboriginal. I think it was 1967. But then you have Lyndon Johnson gives some speech at a university in 65 or 66, and he says, it's not enough to give people equal rights. You have to, and just bring them up to the starting line, I think was the words. Did you have to give them?
The same metaphor we use today. Excellent.
Right. So now we're talking about affirmative action. But of course, affirmative action, it hasn't really worked. I mean, black people were making progress before the Civil Rights Movement, and the progress after the Civil Rights Act and all the affirmative action you can't actually say it was because of affirmative action. You can make the case that it would have happened anyway in the absence of it. But then, affirmative action doesn't work, so you get this movement in the late 80s, out of which comes that idea of racism is now power plus prejudice, right? Because you have to redefine it, because the progress is not being made. We haven't got the equality of outcome that we want, so we have to redefine racism. So now
they don't see that that's what they're doing. That what they're doing is making a change, observing no change, and then saying more changes are needed.
Yeah.
Like at some point, you're throwing good money after bad.
Yeah. So then you move further and further, and now you've got it's not affirmative action. It's like literally witch hunts, and we need to remove these people by force if necessary to get more black.
And if social force doesn't work, we will use actual force. Social force has stopped working. In the last year, it actually has stopped working. Presidents are going, no. There was one recently where they did a whole thing on the campus, and the president just said, no, not going to happen. And if you bother us again, we'll arrest you. And it stopped. So what they realized in this little campus is it's not going to happen here. This college wants to be cool. It wants to be progressive. It wants to be on the right side of history. And they know that.
Yeah.
So they're going to take advantage of it, just like anyone or anything else that makes that claim.
Yeah. And you saw this with, you could see this with Black Lives Matter a year ago when, again, I think it was there was a guy on TV with a Black Lives Matter activist, and he dared to bring up, like, well, yeah, unarmed black people get shot more because they're having more interactions with police, because they're committing more crime. That is a racist statement. Now, it's perfectly factually correct to make, but that is racist. So it's not even, it's just any criticism. And I guess feminists have been doing this for quite a while, that any criticism of a woman is misogyny. So any criticism of a black person is automatically racism. And our tactic is, well, it's the Saul Alinsky tactic, isn't it? It's just attack the person and bring them down rather than attack an institution or a movement. And that's and it's working, and it's been working. And
I think like I said, my fear is that we've reached an area, we've reached that moment, as the good professor pointed out in the hallway. We're at a pivot point. This is a pivot point. And if it pivots the wrong way, then what we'll see is an increase in violence from both sides. If it pivots the other way, this is the defining and crashing moment of this movement. The wave has reached its peak. And I'm kind of hoping that's the case.
Yeah, you said something interesting at the start of this, was that they actually want violence.
Yes.
And I feel like are you familiar with the concept of hybristophilia?
I'm not.
Hybristophilia is when a woman actually antagonizes a man because she actually wants to be hit. She has some underlying. I'm not saying that this is a common thing, but there are women.
Sure it's not common, but I'm also sure it's not impossible.
Yeah, it is. It is a actual technical term, and I feel like these kids are almost the same. That they have a almost unconscious desire to be put in their place. You know, they're like the toddler on the supermarket floor screaming for attention.
They want boundaries. They don't need them.
Yeah, because no one gave them to them.
And from an evolutionary biology standpoint, there's another entertaining parallel here. Find me one of these guys that's out there on the street behaving like this that is also a successful mate.
Yeah.
You won't. What we have is, are you familiar with the structure of societies with chimpanzees?
The bonobos, is that who you're talking about, that study?
And specifically, this is how adolescent chimpanzees behave. If there's overabundance of adolescent males that happen to be born into a troop, they leave. They are never going to find mates. The alpha will kill them, and they know that. So they leave. And what they do is they go around and they literally raid other chimpanzee groups.
Yeah.
For women. Well, that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing aggression. That's all this is. It's a tunneling of aggression in a manner designed to gain the attention of a certain type of woman, specifically the ones that they're most familiar with in these areas. I'll tell you, if I wanted to play the Antifa game in this area, I could have anything in this area. I'm 6'3" and 185 pounds. If I wanted to play the Billy Badass game, it'd be a lot of fun. But I don't. I think it's stupid and childish, and not to mention I don't need another charge ever. So I don't get involved in anything like that. You guys are stupid. In the long run, at the best case, even if you get the attention that you so desire, it's going to be the attention of a clink. So enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one other thing that should be said about this, is that all the vocal voices in the video are pretty much black people, but there's a cadre, of course, white anarchists who are right there alongside, cheering them along.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that those are students.
Right.
Like I said, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this area, specifically the Pacific Northwest, has a rolling group of anarchists that just kind of walks around. I mean, you see them on the street. You can tell they're scab punk looking anarchist pieces of shit. You can tell, you know what you're looking at when you pass them on the street. I think that these guys are one of the reasons that these things are happening so frequently on the West Coast. It's not always the students. The students are getting emboldened by it. The students might be getting aid from it. The students might be getting encouragement from these people. I think it is indeed a minority of the students on a campus at any given time, which is one of the problems, is those kids have the ability to control the campus through force via these activists.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be all the time that it is a minority, that it's not a majority. Even at a very artsy place like this, it's still a minority. That's what Weinstein seems to think. And but the other sort of poisoning aspect about this, which I think you brought up before, which is not like the 60s, is that a lot of the faculty are on board with this. A lot of the faculty, because the faculty are a product of this same type of postmodernist thinking.
Well, the faculty is mostly composed of people that were either part of or were just too late to be a part of that ultra cool movement. So they're trying to relive their glory days or trying to replicate things that their heroes did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm noticing, is there's a lot of hero worship in these groups. There's a lot of, I love Malcolm X, I love Assata Shakur, I love, all these different activists. I can't say I didn't do it, but luckily the ones that I liked, I don't think would be on board with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I used to go to a university with a guy who used to wear a Che Guevara shirt.
Lovely.
I used to think that was cool until I actually learned about Che Guevara.
I'm just saying that of all the people who've roamed this earth, he's one of the more racist. Not the most. He's for sure one of the more racist people that have roamed this earth.
Oh, yeah, he's a horrible prick. But, you still see today.
Yeah, it just turns out Africans are lazy and thieves. And that's not me. That's Che Guevara. That's what he thinks. People of African descent are lazy thieves that can't be included in communism because they'll drag the whole system down. Discuss.
Yeah.
African communists, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. But this, I don't know. I see it here. I don't know if you saw any of I covered I think I've probably done more videos than anyone on the demonstrations over the red pill controversy that's been huge here.
Yeah.
And we have it's the same mentality. It's like, if you just want to watch the film, you are a Nazi, you are a misogynist. And this is directed, like the great thing about this, the last episode at Sydney University, here's a film made by a woman, produced by 3 women, and it's being screened at Sydney University by a woman organizing it. And, they got shouted down as misogynists and Nazis, and this is going to potentially cause violence to women. And there's no hint that someone wants to enter into a dialogue about the questions of the film, which are, by the way, people like us that are engaged in this sort of anti-social justice stuff, the issues in that documentary are run of the mill. They're not even that interesting.
Yeah, they are the most benign. As a matter of fact, I think the only controversial standpoint that film takes is the existence and inclusion of a one Dean Esme. I think the rest of that'll just slide right by most people.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a controversial film. It's very basic things. I mean, suicide, yes, just the basic things that, this is a problem. I mean, if women were offing themselves at the rate men were, it would be a national crisis. But, how this is misogynistic. But it all comes down to the couple of quotes that have been pulled out of context from Paul Elam. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. But the same kind of, it's just the same type of mentality. And this is why people say, oh, you're Australian, why do you cover so much US stuff? It's like, because that is the fucking giant red flag of what is about to come here. And it's already here, quite frankly.
I say, I'm not even, this isn't patriotic, this isn't bragging, because we're cultural leaders. It's not even something I want anymore, because then you get blamed for everything. It's the same thing as being world police, and no bullshit. It's the same thing. Like, who likes the cops? What percentage of the population is like, I sure do love the cops? A very small percentage. How do you think the globe feels about the global police? They fucking hate us.
Yeah.
But if some shit goes down in their country, don't think they aren't picking up that phone and calling the cops.
But I think that comes with age, though, because I had that idea in my 20s that, the US is this benign dictator of world power. But, as I, being as old as I am now and knowing what I know and knowing about history, I mean, thank Christ that the United States was there to intervene in 1942 in Guadalcanal, because the Japanese were coming for Australia, and they did bomb parts of Australia. And most of our troops, of course, were off defending the empire in Europe. I mean, we didn't even have any troops at home.
No,
You know, we were fucked. And we had some in Singapore and places, but we had guys in Egypt and North Africa and, Europe.
Anzac, I mean, hadn't the Anzac just been formed?
You just cut out there. What was that?
Hadn't the Anzac just been formed?
Oh no, the Anzac was the First World War. The Anzac was.
Yeah. So yes, several decades before that, but they weren't they weren't up to fighting until World War II. Like, I know my uncle's Anzac, and he talks about how Vietnam was their worst deployment.
Yeah, well, because at the end of the day, Australia's a very small population country. I mean, we've got less people than Canada, so we can never really. We made an announcement, I think, 2 days ago that we were upping our forces in Afghanistan by 30 people. 30. We're sending an extra 30 troops. That's
30 Australian families that got to deal with that shit.
I mean, Americans often say to me, because my father's a Vietnam vet, and Americans often say to me, Australia was in the Vietnam War? I was like, yeah, we sent lots of people and quite a few of them died. Thanks very much.
Yes, quite a few of them died, and they sent quite a few because guess what? You were local. And we asked the whole of Australia at that point. And like I said, my uncle was in Vietnam. He was Anzac. So,
and we don't say no when the America asks us. We, I think, have gone to every conflict America has asked. Even remember the Coalition of the Willing, I mean, which was it was just fucking nobody. Nobody wanted to join in, but we joined.
Yeah, like I said, I know we've got a long history of working together militarily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. But see, I appreciate. I mean, look now. I mean, no one would have. I wouldn't have thought this 20 years ago. But here we have China, asserting itself in the South China Sea, and so there's no way Australia could deal with that on its own.
Well,
no way.
My joke with all this is I mean, we can only hope things with China heat up because the United States isn't going to be willing to fight a war on two fronts. So it'll pull us out of the Middle East. It'll make us tighten things up here at home, so we can get rid of the war on our home front, and then we can just deal with China. I mean, it'd be a blessing at this point.
I'm not in favor of the draft, but Jesus Christ, you could easily talk me into it for this generation. That would deal with.
I'm actually an advocate for civil service. I think the United States would be a better country overall if you were meant to volunteer for at least 1 year. And go do service, help rebuild roads, help do any infrastructure updates, anything like that. You don't have to go to war. We're not always going to be at war, so keeping a wartime civil service open's a joke. Yeah, but I can see using the youth to kind of boost our economy and our infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting off topic, but I was listening to an interesting podcast just yesterday about if we move to this world of autonomous driving cars, what's going to happen is that every car park in the city, every, the curbs just on the side of the road where you park, people park on the road in suburban areas, these will all become free because along with autonomous driving cars is not just that everyone will have an autonomous driving car. It'll be a shared economy because kids growing up today, they don't give a fuck about cars. I mean, if you have a kid today, that kid is probably going to grow up in a world where they will never drive a car. Everything will be autonomous driving, and it's a shared economy like Uber and Lyft. And so you're going to have all this is what these futurists are saying. You're going to have all this space that has no use now, car parks, the sides of streets, and there needs to be a huge infrastructure overhaul to find out what to do with this space. And so a lot of investment in that if you're looking out 10,
and on
15.
top of that, it would be good to capture the then lost labor because that's a lot of jobs that are going to be gone as well. A lot of driving gigs, a lot of shipping gigs, those are all going to dry up real quick. Well,
as far as I know, I think driving, when you add up truck drivers, taxi drivers, all kinds of drivers, is one of the biggest employment sectors in the whole economy.
I know it is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting to watch happen if that goes through.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about that. I'm not necessarily averse to it, but I know many people that are.
Averse to the autonomous driving
Yeah.
phenomenon? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem, though, that you have is that, let's say, and these are the stats, in the United States every year you have 30,000 deaths on the road. Every year. And we just accept this, right? That's the price you pay for people driving in, fast-moving fucking weapons. And what happens when, autonomous driving is introduced in, say, San Francisco or LA or somewhere, and they find that road fatalities go down 95%. At that point, at some point, it's going to be almost illegal to get a license and drive by yourself because the risk of you driving is so much greater than an automated car.
You got to remember we're the Second Amendment nation, though.
Yeah.
You guys all gave up your guns after a mass shooting, and
to no avail.
Yeah, and we won't. That's the other thing. So there's a different attitude in the United States about stuff like that.
But you don't have an amendment for cars, though, do you?
No, that's true. We don't. You have a valid point there. There is no. I would love to see that challenged in court. The argument that a vehicle in the proper situations is a weapon, thus is cleared under the Second Amendment laws. That'll be a fun challenge because it's going to happen. I'd love to see that reach the Supreme Court. Are cars weapons? If you say no, that means every time a police officer shot someone that was driving at them with a car or trying to drive away in a car due to the fact that car is a weapon was wrong. So answer wisely here, motherfucker. Answer very wisely.
Yeah. See, cars could be one of those things, like cars will be a theme park of the future where you pay to go out somewhere like, in buttfuck Arizona, and they'll have a 50 square miles where you can drive a 1975 Chevy, and it'll be like, and they'll teach you how to drive it. That'll be like an adventure weekend because no one knows how to drive anymore.
Here with NASCAR already, where you just pay $150 to go drive a NASCAR around the loop a couple times. So it'll just be that.
Yeah, the only difference is that in the future you'll have to teach people to drive first because they won't even know how to drive a car.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm tossed up between it. I'm actually in the middle when it comes to that. I see the benefit. I can even see the benefit to myself personally. Insofar as, it allows you to do other things when you're in the car, which is free. However, I don't like the idea of not being in some sort of control of my vehicle. I don't even being in a car when someone else is driving. So
I think it's I mean, what they found, they did some experiments where they put people in autonomous driving cars. They said, look, you don't have to do anything. What's the first thing to do when the car pulls out? Everyone's looking left and right. You just can't shake people out of those experiences. And so there's a whole generation of people, us included, who just can't get our head around that. But it's the kids that come up in this world that, and even this is what the researchers are saying now. When I was 16, 17, you couldn't wait to get your fucking license because that license meant that you had some independence. You could get in a car and you could drive to your friend's place. You could go to the mall. You go somewhere. You go, up to the top of some hill, look out and get it on with your girlfriend. But today, because the kids interact via screens, essentially, they don't feel this need to jump in a car and escape, and they're not interested. And a lot of kids that are now 16, 17 don't care about getting a license. They're not interested. Their parents are dragging them down there to get it.
Yeah, but then you have places in America that are so rural. That's the other plus side here is the rural population does not play that shit.
Yeah, and that's why
I live in a town where there are kids that throw parties when they turn 16 and they can drive.
Yeah, and a lot of this, of course, all this research comes from these big city colleges, and they don't actually think about people who live in the rural areas of the flyover states.
If you run your study on who drives in New York and then think that determines the percentage of the population that drives in the United States, you've made an error, a very big error.
Yeah, because it's funny. That's always what the conversation is about. It's about, hey, in LA and the traffic will be in New York. But what about fucking Utah? you know,
Yeah.
or
Montana's not listening, by the way. You can talk about all that all you want, but Montana, the entire state of Montana, didn't hear a word you just said.
that's the great thing about, I think, the United States. See, Australia's pretty big, but 2/3 of the country is completely uninhabited. There's no one there because it's fucking desert. But in your vastness, there's generally people scattered around the place. We're basically around the coast and a few inland areas.
But yeah, your population tends to left and right.
Yeah. I mean, the 2/3 of Australia is actually classed as desert.
Yeah.
I mean, it's desert. So
you can't live there. There's like you can dig a well and there's no water, that kind of desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not even like we have some deserts here, and there are even areas like that here. But even most of the areas that would be classed as desert land here, you can dig a fucking well. You just have to go deep. You can always get water, so you can always have a house or a ranch or something.
Yeah. Oh, well, it looks like, what are we doing here? An hour?
That's a solid hour.
It's a solid hour. I think we solved the autonomous driving problem.
And the problems with colleges in the United States.
And what was the actual point of this again? Oh, yeah, Evergreen State University. Yep. So the verdict on that is that it's fucked, and stay tuned. Because this thing's still going.
Bomb from orbit, I think that's the safest route.
Yeah, helicopters and DDT. That's my solution. Just a more potent.
While you're overhead, go just a hair south and pop Portland off for us. Just do us a big favor. That'd be a big favor on all of us.
See, this is interesting from my point of view, because I don't watch Portlandia. Now, people say, because I listen to certain podcasts that are from very progressive people, and I try to ignore that part because I'm just listening for their. It's basically venture capitalists talking about future stuff. So they talk about Portland, and I've never watched Portlandia, but Portlandia is supposed to be a good microcosm of what Portland's like. And is it really progressive, or is it a facade? What's the story with Portland?
Let's say the people on the ground certainly believe that they're going to keep Portland weird.
All right.
The people on the top are making billions of dollars off of the idiots that show up in Portland and think they're going to keep Portland weird.
What's the economic?
I think most of the economy is actually military still. I think a huge part of Portland is military, and they just basically. I've joked that Portland is kind of a military town, like San Francisco, also a big naval base. What they've done is in the 1970s and then later in the 80s, they advertised these regions of the world as being super hippie, progressive places to go, because they want those populations to be the first hit if a war comes. So you surround military bases with unfortunate population pockets, and that's what they've done, I think. I can't find a place in the United States that's fairly progressive at this point that doesn't have a military base that has like a rolling protest outside of it.
What about Austin? That's another one that's always floated around.
Yeah, I don't know that Austin has a base, but Austin is essentially attempting to be Portland in Texas. It's adorable. I've been through there a couple times.
That's got to be hard to pull off, isn't it? In Texas.
It is, but the Austin PD is on board. So it's kind of like this little pocket that all the liberals can run to in Texas to get left alone.
Right. And feel morally superior.
Yes. Oh, they do. Oh, they know they're better than Dallas. It's not even up for debate. They know for a fact they're better than Dallas.
You've watched I take it, the Atheist Experience. I think that's where they come out of, those guys. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say that, like, in that area, I mean, these students are enjoying this.
Oh, yeah.
It's become a pastime. I mean, we even saw them in Evergreen complaining about their homework. That video?
Yeah.
Yeah, to contact the teachers and tell them that our assignments won't be done because we're here protesting and being annoying.
Oh, God. I mean,
and that's your job now. We're protesting. We're protesting you, and we're telling you now you also need to help us do this.
There were various protests in several United States colleges that After Trump's election, students were asking for time off. They didn't want to sit exams because they were too traumatized by the outcome of the election. And the colleges just roll over and go, oh, yeah, that's you get to have a day off because the person who's the president is not the one that you wanted.
Yeah, that happened here.
Jesus
Christ. That absolutely happened here. I read about it in the local newspaper that students were, they needed days off because of the trauma and yada, yada, yada.
So maybe we could wrap this up with, how does this get resolved? Because, and I'm talking about Evergreen in particular, but, you can talk more widely in general, because what happens is that these psychos go as far as they can, and then it gets violent. They get violent, and then the adults have to come in with their violence, which means the law, usually. And, of course, the psychos will turn around and say that, of course, this is Nazi, oppressive people, even though we brought it on ourselves. But, we're using Foucault's fucking playbook here, which is that, violence against the oppressor is always justified, but not against the oppressed. So how do the adults step in, take control of the situation whilst deflecting these charges of being authoritarians and racists and all the rest of it? Is it possible?
I honestly don't think it's possible. I wish I had better to say to that, but there is nothing else.
Yeah.
There has to be a crackdown. There's no other, I can't see any other path, but it's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to ebb it further. This isn't new.
Oh, yeah.
We had this is rolling out from a lot of the people that are doing this are right out of Occupy. A lot of people who are out of Occupy were also part of the World Trade Commission kerfuffle that happened in the early 2000s. This is all movement. It's all the same group of people who are moved by the same ideas.
Yeah.
And they've been slamming themselves against this forever. They're not going to stop. It's like, okay, imagine I came to you and said, all right, so what, aside from doing something that would upset these groups, can we do to stop the spread of the Islamization of these areas? The answer is nothing. Anything you do that works against them is going to upset them to the same level. There's no nice path here. There's no good way. There's just not. The problem that we're running into is everybody wants to be the good guy. They're convinced that they're the good guys no matter what they do, and we're not.
Yeah. I don't see how it can end well. Just on the Occupy Wall Street thing, see, they had legitimate grievances at the beginning. Now, I remember this. People criticize Obama. They remember the last few years of his legacy and what he'd done in the Middle East and things. But I lost any hope for him during the first months of his administration when he came out and said, we're not going to punish anyone. We're going to wipe the slate clean, and we're not going to hold anybody accountable in the banking system. All he did was threaten the banks with new regulation. But he did not frog march fucking executives into jail like he should have, because in the late 80s and 90s, early 90s, George Bush the first put 1,000 executives in jail from the savings and loans crisis. And this was way bigger. And Obama did fucking nothing. Bernie Madoff, that's it. Madoff.
It's stunning to me that it's gone so far from that, because that's kind of when I got involved in political activism at all, when it came to groups, was occupying and operating against, what's going on with this banking bullshit, and why are you letting this slide? Do you not see that you're setting us up as a country to fail? Yeah. Because that's all it is. You're setting us up economically to fuck ourselves. And you just seem okay with that. This is like your MO. You're like, yep, well, not only are they going to fuck you, I'm going to hold your arms. That's what Obama said. Yep, they're definitely going to fuck you in the ass. We're just going to hold you down. Like, okay, thanks. That helped a whole lot. You've basically said they're allowed to do this and we'll back them up, as opposed to what you should have done and shutting it down. And yes, this would have caused some ripple effects in our economy directly in people's lives. I acknowledge that. I think anyone would. But is it better than simply feeding the snake to let him bite you again later?
This is so overdone. George Bush, fucking, you're a Republican, you're a conservative, and you had the hide to come out and say we have to suspend capitalism in order to save it. This is the right wing of politics. You fucking kidding me? No one cares. Look, Goldman Sachs could have went under, and no one cares. It doesn't matter if Goldman Sachs goes under. It just happened that Henry Paulson was the fucking Treasury Secretary, and he made AIG pay them out the back door for their silly bets that they made. You need
they
to
don't
do that.
discuss the fact that this was about an earlier change to the banking law that allowed people who shouldn't have loans given to them for houses given them loans for houses.
That was part of it. I mean, again, and then that's a stupid overreach of affirmative action. Like, oh, let's give loans to people who shouldn't get loans because fairness, because feelings.
We've got to give them this opportunity. It's not like we all collectively share this risk by banking.
Yeah, and now you don't either. See, we have the same horrible backlash against banks here. The government's just proposed a new tax on banks, a new levy on banks, and it's partly justified because, as you know, in the United States now, $100,000 of everybody's savings accounts, if you have that much, is guaranteed by the government. There's an implicit guarantee on these banks by the government. In Australia, it's 250 grand. That's a guarantee. So what incentive is there for banks to manage themselves wisely? They know the government's got their fucking back. Nothing has changed. Nothing.
No, and the problem is that things like the FDIC are billed as protections for the user. They're not. They're protections for the bank. That's the thing, like you just described. If they weren't allowed to gamble against their current assets, we could discuss this being a protection for the individual.
Yeah.
But they are. And as long as they're allowed to do that, then we're always going to have this problem, especially if the house covers a percentage of your losses. And that's what we're discussing. A casino where the house covers you even if you lose.
Yeah. I mean, I think you fix this. There's been some, I must admit, there's been some changes to the way they remunerate CEOs. So for example, a lot of CEO packages now have clawbacks. So if you fuck up 5 years down the line, they claw back some of the bonus money. But it's not a real, it doesn't really address the underlying problem, which is you got to have skin in the game. And you got to say that if you lead your company to the edge of bankruptcy, that's 10 years in jail, dude. 10 years. Yeah. It's got to be real penalties for people. It's not, it's white collar crime. You get fined and you get dismissed from office and you go and live on your yacht for 20 years.
What's ironic is that only works at that high level. I was actually incarcerated with a guy that was there on banking fraud charges as a bank manager.
Right.
So still go to prison. If the guy under the billionaire helps the bank or somebody steal from the bank, then he's for sure going to prison. But if the bank steals everybody's money, the guy who did that is fine. What?
Yeah. Well, Dick Fuld, Dick Fuld was the CEO of Lehman Brothers. I mean, he should still be in jail. This guy knowingly colluded to misrepresent the financial statements of his company. Him and his CFO should be sharing a cell together.
No,
but he's
come
not.
on. He did what was best for the company. That's what's required.
That arrogant prick, that arrogant prick had his own elevator so that that went to the top floor so that he didn't have to hobnob with the plebs on the way up.
Steve, plebs go out. Thank you. Like, imagine that. And that's a level that I don't think many people can ever attain.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine thinking you're that special. Like, look, I just never want to be approached by anyone ever. Thank you.
Arrogant prick. Someone said in the comments here that Evergreen shouldn't it be renamed Lord of the Flies State University. Yeah, that's probably a good one.
Evergreen Institution for the Politically Insane. I think that's
that's a pretty good one too. That's probably the title of my next video.
Excellent. Well, I have a comment coming from a private room I'm always in. They want to know who your waifu is.
My waifu?
Yes.
Oh, she got dumped. I'm divorced. I had a waifu in Japan, a Japanese waifu. Yeah.
You had a Japanese waifu? You live in the dream?
I lived in Japan for 13 years, approximately.
Oh, that's why you can see why this is all crazy. Excellent. It usually takes exclusion from the society to return and say, hey, this is kind of fucked.
Well, that's my whole thing. I essentially left Australia in 2001. Like, December 2001. Came back in February 2016, and I really only started paying attention to things around Gamergate time, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And when I came back, and I had this naive idea that when I came back to Australia, I'm like, okay, this shit is mostly coming out of the US. Australia would be okay. No, Australia.
Yeah, there's no way the cancer metastasized here too.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide. Nowhere in the Western world to hide.
No, well, and the thing to me is that it is something that they're trying to spread it to places that are non-Western and are just being met with contempt and confusion.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video of the Black Lives Matter protest in Japan?
Oh, did they have one? Where, in Tokyo?
I don't know, but I almost pissed my pants laughing. I've never. It's nothing but white people in Japan, led by like the onlyest black guy in all of Japan.
Yeah.
There's like 12 of them, but you know how Japan runs their state protests.
Yeah, they give them time off at lunchtime.
Yeah, you can't do anything. It's not like an American protest where you show up and rabble rouse for the entire day. No, you have a 30-minute window. You get in, you get out. The police are right there. If you don't get out, they fucking remove you. That's it. This is your protest. You're allowed to talk, but you're not allowed to take up everyone's all day. Come on. People got shit to do.
You know, in Japan, they would have seen this and they would have thought, oh, it's a parade. They wouldn't have had a clue what it was about. They wouldn't have had a fucking idea.
I have an Asian subscriber. I'm not sure where they're from, so I'm going to be vague because they didn't disclose. But he basically said he approached some of the businessmen he works with, some Asian businessmen, with this concept that was being spread. This was 2.5 years ago, about white privilege and how, you know, white people are meant to feel sorry for the successes they've had at the expense of other parties, or even at all at this point, because of those previous successes had on the backs of other people. And he said the room erupted in laughter. He said that was the reaction. It erupted in laughter and said, wait, white people are being told to feel bad when they succeed and they're listening?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Asian response to all this right there. So if you're trying to set up a Black Lives Matter, you know, Tokyo, I wish you all the luck in the world and ask only you buy a high-end camera with good audio equipment so we can all catch it. That's all I'm asking.
Japanese people are generally so placid and polite. They will just look on with sort of mild bemusement. They just, oh, okay, yeah, whatever.
Exactly what it looked like. They were just standing around like, what is this even about? The signs are all in English, but they're like Japanese characters on the bottom left and bottom right to translate. So they didn't even use the mother language. Like as their main language, they didn't use the mother language, the native tongue. No, we're just make it in English because, you know, that's what Americans do.
But see, knowing Japanese language, see, Black Lives Matter as a direct translation will not work. Like it won't make any sense. You can't just, you know, take 3 words and it just, I don't know. I don't even know if you could. I know
what you mean. The Japanese language doesn't facilitate the use of a phrase like Black Lives Matter.
It wouldn't. It just wouldn't translate. And even if you could get the best translation you could get, you'd still then have to explain it to Japanese people. They wouldn't get it. I mean, have you got experience in Japan?
Not in Japan. I've interacted.
Well, so, I mean, I tell you the funniest thing, I had a live stream for my patrons the other day when I was talking about this, that the idea of cultural appropriation. Now, I think up in your area, maybe a year or 2 ago in Seattle, there was a kimono day that was shut down because it promoted Orientalism, I think was the phrase used. You remember this one?
Yes, and I believe it was shut down by someone who wasn't even Japanese.
And the thing is, though, man, if you've ever lived in Japan, Japan loves, it is the only, well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know all the cultures on earth, but Japanese love appropriating culture, if we have to use that stupid term. I mean, if you walk into a department store in Japan in November, you will hear the exact same Christmas music. You will see Christmas trees. You will see tinsel. You won't see a Santa Claus. You won't see an actual Santa Claus sitting there because they don't do that. It's not a public holiday, but they love to appropriate other people's holidays and they celebrate it. And I tell you what, the moment we used to have, I worked at Japanese university. We had what they call Jinbei Day, Jinbei and Yukata. Yukata is the summer version of the kimono, and the Jinbei is the male equivalent. but the male equivalent's actually really, because it's for hot weather, so the male equivalent is actually really comfortable. The female one isn't very comfortable, as you know, because there's so many parts to this shit. Yeah. And so we would dress up the teachers to encourage the students, and the students love it. They come up and they get photos with it. They are so impressed that you take enough interest in their culture to dress up. They love that shit. They absolutely love it.
Yeah. They take it as a compliment.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with that that movie that what's her face starred in. You know, she was playing a Japanese.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. They like that. They don't care.
I was lucky. Instructor I had for composition was a lover and had studied for I think 25 years in Japan.
Right.
So he with all these stories, and he said the most interesting thing was that there was the saying in Japan that you're Buddhist when you're young, you're Shinto when you're old, and everyone's a Christian on Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
But it's not only that. But when it comes to cultural appropriation in Japan, I only have one word for you: do some research into kanji.
Yeah,
it's literally Chinese characters that the Japanese said "thank you" and took.
Yeah,
just we use those now. We say a similar thing, but not the same.
Yeah,
stole an entire language.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, even in when you learn kanji, there's a onyumi and well, fuck, I've even forgot. But there's always two interpretations of the kanji, and one of them is the Chinese one. I mean, that's how you learn the kanji.
Yeah. Would that count, you think, for these groups as respecting the culture enough? As at least you acknowledge this was Chinese once, but now we use it. Like, is that all I want? I'll give them a toss if it makes them feel better.
And what about like this cultural appropriation? I mean, okay, so if you're of African descent, can you just strip naked, denude yourself of all your technology? Actually, can you move out of your house because you've obviously appropriated that idea and basically just go live in the dirt?
You have to understand. I actually am researching to do and this is a real tangent, to do a documentary on Afrocentrism. And I've been doing this subject for about 1.5 years now, and now I'm doing an actual serious look into where all this started. And one of the guys I follow kind of actually argues that that's what should be done. All of the things that are done, and this is his metaphor, not mine, by black people are the equivalent of the behavior you should expect from something like a fish out of water. Stole Africans from their native lands, dragged them to America, and then even Tariq Nasheed says this line, who's the famous guy who made the Hidden Color series and all these other crazy black sports.
Yeah, I've seen his stupid tweets.
Yeah, he's even said that black people are like hippopotamuses or pigs taken out of their natural environment. They behave poorly. And the argument he makes is it's an imposition of the expectations associated with whiteness. Now, if you really break that down, is he not saying black people are incapable of behaving like white people in the same environment? That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Out loud. If I went out and said, you know, I don't think blacks can perform the same as whites in our environment, and we should probably be aware of that. That's literally the talking point of the KKK right now. Verbatim. Yep. The KKK, when Camille Ball used a CNN show called The United Shades of Grey, where he went around and interviewed all these different fringe groups. He started with the KKK. The worst he could get them to say is, I'm not certain black people can govern themselves. That is the worst thing they could get that motherfucker to say. How is that not a mirror image of what Tariq is saying? White people imposing white rules on black people is unfair because they can't operate under the same premises. That's what we're saying.
But what is the alternative? Because and now that you're studying this, so maybe you know about this, but remember the movement towards from the migration from using the term black to African American. This was in part in concert with a group of African American blacks, some African Americans who went back to Africa to get back to their roots, and they came back and like they were going to go live there, and they came back in like 2 months. They couldn't handle it. Yeah. Do you remember this?
The alternative that happened in Libya or Liberia, I can never remember which one it is, but one of them, I think, Liberia, that was given to American blacks. And when they showed up, they almost immediately started doing things akin to enslavement to the local population.
Right.
Because it turns out the local population doesn't take orders too well and doesn't really want to quit all this weird cultural shit they do and be productive members of a new burgeoning society. Turns out they want to remain in their tribal state.
Yep.
See, those are the kind of walls that people hit that then force people to start having really bizarre, topsy-turvy, mind-bending conversations about why this happens.
It is strange, isn't it? But I mean, because I have a very biased sort of sample of African Americans, because the one guy that I hung out with in Japan was a black guy from Florida who came from a wealthy family. His father was a judge, and so this guy had none of this, I'm a victim of slavery or Jim Crow, anything like that. He recognized his privilege, I mean, his financial privilege, in life, and that he'd gotten ahead. And he dismisses all of this shit. He just thinks it's ridiculous.
And he had no remnant cultural issues either when it came to having come from one of these worse off areas. So
no, I mean, he's kind of, I guess, in the mold of a Thomas Sowell, if you like, that's his way of thinking, although he wouldn't be that staunchly conservative in his views, but he just doesn't believe in this victimhood at all. It's like, just shut the fuck up and get a job, get a life. That's his kind of attitude. But so I guess what I'm really asking is, how much of the black population do you think buys into this? Because I get frequent commenters in my comment section, black people going, say, I'm ashamed, I'm black and I'm ashamed of this shit. I mean, what is the...
I get that a lot too. And honestly, to me, that's the hardest part. That's by far the hardest part. I don't want these people to feel bad. No. I know plenty. I could do this alternatively and pull up plenty of videos of white people raving about ridiculous shit that should make me feel bad, but it doesn't, because I don't have that kind of cultural identity. That's just a white guy. He's just a dumb white guy. I can do that, and other people aren't implicitly going to think otherwise. That's the one thing that I really don't like about having to do this, and it is from a care of a community I was essentially raised in. It's not going to get any better if this is the way things continue going on. But in pointing things out, my goal is not to incite worse things. You know what I'm saying? It's not to make, like, I have plenty of comments that come in that is like, I'm so ashamed of this behavior and this is what, represents my race. No, it isn't. And it shouldn't be. Yeah,
you're not responsible for the actions of other people.
No, and the fact is that it's not even explicitly placed on them. It's implicitly placed on them even within their own community. It starts with youth. I watched it in my youth, where if you deviated from whatever the social order and norm was in that area, you weren't being black enough.
Right.
That's not healthy. That's not healthy on any side. That's not healthy for anyone. And you should maybe not do that. And that's what they're experiencing, these very unfortunate side effects to, is being told at some point that there is this thing that is a behavior that is being black. And if you don't conform to that, you're not being black, which is, I mean, shit. Again, if I had said that, if it was coming from me, hey, listen, you better keep acting like you should, darky. No, you're not allowed to do that. Stop. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it to other people in your group? That's dumb.
Well, you know what we're having down here in Australia? We're having now, there's a big conference of Aboriginal tribes getting together because they want constitutional recognition. They want to be mentioned as the first peoples in the Australian Constitution. Now, the Australian Constitution is not like the US Constitution. It's basically just a rule book. It doesn't talk about aspirations of individual liberty or anything like that. But they want to be mentioned. They want a treaty. Essentially, they want a form of apartheid. That's what they're asking for, and that's, I think, what Black Lives Matter want as well. They want special privileges for black people. That's what's happening here.
It's not just that, and I mean, this is I don't know how much of the videos you've watched that have come out of Evergreen have been so far, how many you've seen or how many hours you've dedicated to it, because I've dedicated quite a bit of time. I don't know if it's even at Evergreen, but it's being included in videos of Evergreen, so I can only trust the sources I'm being given. But a professor or a teacher or some form of authority is up on the podium, and someone starts screaming about how, how dare you propose to, lecture to black and brown students? We taught you how to bathe. We taught you all this when you came out of the mountains, and it gets a round of applause.
Yeah. Out of the cave, wasn't it? Wasn't
Yeah.
it caves? Yeah, I heard that bit. Yeah.
This is a normative talking point in Afrocentric speaking circles. This is normal. That is the standard discussion points.
Well, how about this one? Was that the United States was built on the back of slaves. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, slavery was confined to certain parts of the South.
Well, it wasn't confined, but it was definitely concentrated.
Concentrated, okay. But what percentage of Americans own slaves? It's some tiny percent, right?
Yeah, a fraction of a fraction. Yeah, it was very small, like 5% or some shit like that.
And most of the slaves were engaged in work that, I mean, cotton fields, and actually the only reason that industry was viable was because of the cheap labor, because it actually didn't make very good returns either.
Well, I mean, there were, at the same time as there was slavery, there were white sharecroppers, there were white cotton farmers, there were white pickers. This was plantation slavery required an enormous amount of overhead and a huge set of connections and guarantees to bother going through with it.
But what a ballsy statement to make. Was literally the country was built off the back of slaves, like as though slaves built everything, all the buildings they came. Come on, look, slavery was fucking horrible, but
Well, if you equate, and this is the meanest thing I've said to someone who was actually getting in my face about this recently, and it was essentially, they said that, we built this country. I said, if you equate the piece of machinery used to build the building to the architect, sure. But you weren't the architect. You were a piece of machinery. And that's harsh, but that's the reality. You didn't cultivate new cotton picking techniques out in them fields, okay?
And the thing is, you were the piece of machinery in a yard of 100 machines, and you were like 2 of them.
Yes, but how do you not understand that saying that doesn't actually benefit your cause? You should be focusing as a community on the contributions you can make tomorrow, making something of value of these communities would be much better than crying about things that happened 4 generations before you were born.
Yeah.
It's not functional. It just isn't. Beyond all the rest of it, it's just not functional behavior. And it would be functional behavior if we would stop allowing it to make progress.
You remember last year? You remember the Milwaukee riots over the shooting of a black guy by a black police officer who went to the same school as him? Remember that one?
I do.
And then CNN fudged that thing that the sister said about going out and ransacking white homes in the suburbs or something. And CNN, so that, remember the guy that was filmed in the street? He said, like, direct quote almost, he said something like, white people don't give us enough.
Yeah.
It was almost a direct quote. I mean, how do you, it's not, I mean, the guy's clearly wasn't particularly educated, but you have a narrative, you have a worldview that you've been brought up with, that the world, in particular white people, owe you something for existing.
Yes.
How do you get to that?
I don't know, but I'll tell you, the effects of it are not good. The unending chip on the shoulder effect that has occurred through the last 3 generations has been insane. I mean, just completely insane. I got the number of times that I talk to someone and they bring that narrative up as an attempt to power play, and that's all it ever is. It's a gag, but really, I mean, I think there was some, either Chappelle or something, where every time someone stood up and said something, he'd be like, "What? It's because I'm black, right?"
Yeah.
Because I'm black. That's not a parody. That was him parodying the people in his own community that were saying, you're doing this because I'm black, not mean anything. And it's
Yeah.
vital. It's vital for you to know that has to mean something. If
Right.
it's not meaning something, you're in a lot of fucking trouble. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, the left has destroyed many words now, haven't they? They don't mean anything. I mean, does anyone actually care about being called a racist anymore? I mean, it doesn't mean.
I'm called a racist for talking about wanting to end the war on drugs in the United States and then capture that community's excess labor in an attempt to reinvigorate the United States infrastructure cause. I was called a racist for not being allowed to explain that that's what I wanted to happen. I didn't even get to that. It was just initially talking about the war on drugs, which they'll readily say as a tool is used predominantly against the black population. Mm-hmm. However, if I target quote unquote black people for the labor that's being lost there, how am I different than a cotton picker owner, huh?
So are you the real Dread Pirate Roberts? Is that what you're telling me?
I have a nautical theme, so I'm many pirates, as the case may be.
Yeah, I guess to bring it back to talking about that Milwaukee and that mindset, that I think this is the great sort of delusion by people like Weinstein, is that, don't you see, Weinstein, that your politics and your worldview in some way contributes to this notion that once you tell people that they're oppressed and they're entitled to something based on the color of their skin or their race, that opens up this fucking huge chasm which these psychos will now exploit. And you stand back and go, what? How did that happen? I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'm exploring this again, that it goes back to something that Marcus Garvey believed. And Marcus Garvey believed that the only reason the white race was successful in the world was through a false mythological narrative that said white people were the creation of God, all things that were existent for white people, yada, 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 the theory of white supremacy. And that the only way black people could succeed is if they made their own narrative that was like that.
Right.
Jump to We Was Kings, and here we are. I mean, he literally made that happen. I don't think he meant for it to go where it has, where people are saying, melanin is actually compressed sunlight because it contains all the bands of energy that make, I don't think he meant for that to happen. And I don't think he meant for so many hustlers and shysters and money grabbers and snake oil salesmen he intended to have pop up either. But that was the end result.
So actually, that brings up when you talk of snake oil salesmen, you're in that region of the country that has some of these white guilt cleansing places you can go, don't they? You know what I'm talking about? Where you can.
Yeah, the college I'm near actually held one of those. That was like, it was the I think white responsibility and racial jujitsu or something.
Oh yeah, there was a program, and it was called The Depravity of Whiteness. The Depravity of White.
That sounds familiar. But this is also the college that ironically locked up 3 basketball players on rape charges that were never really, and now they can never come back to the school. They're just banned. Even though the courts found them not guilty, the panel said, well, the women still feel uncomfortable, so get your black ass off campus.
Yeah, that helps, doesn't it? I mean, well, that's a whole other fucking podcast, isn't it? The ridiculous kangaroo court around rape and college campuses.
Oh, but don't worry. Those guys were black, but we're going to essentially have them kicked off campus without a trial.
Jesus.
But we're progressive. We're super progressive.
I guess the women's still trump the black people in certain circles.
Only, please. From now on, please, California, send only black women. Black men will get banned for being accused of rape. Just know that now. We've clarified it now. We're good.
But that's the thing about the Evergreens. A lot of the people mouthing off are black women.
I will refer to Tommy Sotomayor for that, and I will move just right the fuck on past that. That's all I'm...
Yeah, I'm familiar with his...
Sotomayor is an extremely angry man, and to say that he had a bigoted problem against black women is an understatement. However, he formed that opinion over years and years and years and years of abuse within these communities. And that's another thing that never acknowledged. And I think we're seeing plenty of videos in recent times to say, hey, Tommy, you got another one? Got another one.
Yeah, well, it's that impunity, isn't it? It's that impunity that as a woman that you can get away with certain things that if you were a man, you'd get a punch in the head.
Yeah, and she has a double card. She's a black woman. So if you stop her, it's misogynoir, as they say, which is specifically the hate of black women.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've seen that that study of online dating sites where apparently Asian women like white men the most, and black men like Asian women the most, and I think white women actually like white men the most. But there's some group that likes black men the most. No group likes black women the most.
Yeah, it's two bottoms. The two bottoms in that study were Asian men and black women.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was actually just a poll of what matches were made, which is what made it so uncomfortable, because it wasn't like one of these they were attempting to make one of these cutesy little dating site informative panels, and accidentally started a sexual race riot online. It was the funniest thing I've seen happen in a long time, because they literally just released these data points and they were like, check it out, guys, and then people were like, hey, wait a second. Wait a fucking second here.
That's right, yeah, because it wasn't a survey type where where things are dubious. It was they tracked who replied to who the most, right?
They just tracked the data and then released it. It was like, oops, shit happens. What am I going to tell you?
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know about the whole debate about fatherlessness in the black communities. It seems that men bear the brunt of that, but Jesus, you got to think that the ladies ain't exactly, holding it together.
Yeah, well, he's as often gone because of his own problems as he is gone because she a crazy bitch.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not it was responsible to breed in the first place is a whole nother conversation, but it's not just fatherlessness. I'll say my stepdad celebrated when his 15-year-old daughter got pregnant because he was going to have a grandbaby. Maybe don't, is what I'm saying. Maybe wait till she fucking has her education and the dad is not a 22-year-old convict. Maybe don't, is what I'm saying. But those kind of things you can't discuss.
Grandpappy comes from a different era. He needs to put down the banjo.
Yeah, but that's just what it comes from. These are the kind of problems that no one's even allowed to talk about.
Yeah. No, not allowed to talk about. Jesus Christ.
You're just not. If you bring it up, it's instantaneously. If no one even says anything, know that even if no one says anything, that's the last time you're going to be welcome here. Just bring that up. Just know that's the last time these people are going to talk to you. So.
Yeah. Well, I think
way too much. Those appear to be the two options.
Well, I think we've left people with a lot of hope from this.
Well, I'm always the hopeful. I'll tell you, I always am here bringing the hope.
Yep. Well, let's hope that you continue to do that, and I will continue to do the same. And I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a good discussion. I don't know if we solved anything. We just made the world a gloomier place. But hey, that's our mission statement, really. I think
pragmatism isn't pretty. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing you learn, isn't it, from your wide-eyed days of being a youngster, and then you grow up and you realize, you know what? The system ain't that bad. The system's around because it kind of works in some ways.
Well, and I've two questions. Do you have a better option? Can you describe it to me? And exactly how many people have to die before your plan's implemented? Those are the big three.
Yeah. How many have to die? Because I mean, these people. I've made this point before. I'm desperately trying to stop this podcast, but I can't. I've made this point before. These are the people who will lead the next purges. They will build the next gulags. That's who these people are. Just read 1920s Russia. That's all you have to do. That's it. That's the model. Or, as I said before, it's the 60s. It's the Red Guard in China. This is the model.
We can dodge the whole Nazis thing. We go straight to fucking Russia because that's it's essentially that. It's
Predates
essentially
the Nazis.
by quite a bit. The Nazis were trying to emulate it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that was an interesting point that someone made the other day, that eugenics and what Nazis did there. And people are going to take this out of context and think that I'm pro-Nazi or something. Obviously, I'm not. But all the Nazis did was pick up and run with the progressive ideal of eugenics that was created in the late 19th century, early 20th century. This was a progressive idea, and the Nazis just took it to its full fucking conclusion.
Yep. It's uncomfortable, but it's true.
Well, I bet you that one quite mind.
Knowing absolutely that you're right is the most position in the world you could possibly.
Yeah. Oh, well, man, what's the time over there? Nearly midnight.
Yeah, it's 11 here, so we should probably wrap it up. Thanks for having me on, though. You're one of the better content creators out there. I enjoy your material quite a bit.
Oh, thanks, man. It's a compliment coming from you. I noticed that you'd been a little low on the content, and I watched your little 3-minute video the other day about new directions and stuff. And I know what you're saying there, because I feel that way too, that the algorithm and the pressure to put content out, and sometimes instead of doing the thoughtful video, you reach for the low-hanging fruit, and you don't feel particularly good about putting that kind of stuff out.
Yeah, basically. So I'm looking at pivoting to a little bit more serious content, a little bit more storytelling, and then, like I said, I'm working on the long form. It's looking like it's going to shape up to be about an hour and 40 minutes of the first episode dissecting these groups and categorizing them from the spiritualists to the fucking what I call the hustlers revolution.
Yeah.
These fucking ex-convicts that made up bizarre spiritualities or regurgitate other people's for money, and to sell them water with dye in it and fucking powder.
You should put that you should put that behind a paywall and charge people $1 for it or something.
Yeah, I might do that. But yeah. Once again, thanks for having me on. I think this was at least enjoyable, if not life-changing and world-solving. But
yeah, I just got to apologize to the chat because we didn't take much notice of you, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Anyway, thanks for showing up, people, and I'll catch you later, man.
Yeah, take it easy.